Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first ever batch talk for the class of 1991 at St. Stephen's College. This is a series in honor of our 35th anniversary. Even as I say it, I cannot believe it. My name is Sreenivasan, and I have a fantastic group of my batchmates, my classmates who have joined us. You're going to meet Gautam Hazarika, Devika Rangachari, Devyani Kapoor, and Manish Chand. We are going to talk about their books, their author journeys, and also life during, maybe a little before, during, and after St. Stephen's and the lives that they have built. And we want to make sure that you get to ask, if you're watching us live, you get to ask us questions. Otherwise, we will be sharing this for people to watch afterward. So, with that, let me welcome to our show, our Zoom call here, my batchmates, and please say hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Sree.
Hi.
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 Great to
Hello.
Thanks
see
for
all of
joining.
you. I see that folks are our guests are joining us from different parts of the world. Devika is in Stockholm. She's a history batchmate. Gautam is in Singapore, economics. Devyani is in Gurgaon, history, my batch, and Manish is in Delhi in and did English. I associate him with philosophy because he used to do so much stuff around philosophy, and I think he is, in addition to being a foreign affairs expert, really a philosopher at heart. We are going to have folks joining us from as they watch us from wherever they are, and we really appreciate them being with us. Thank you all for being here. Would love your feedback about how this goes and this series, and also your ideas for what we could do, because we want to do more of these and make sure that people can participate and different topics. We want to try different things. So I'm just going to have each of them just say hello, and then I will give them a proper introduction. So, Devika, tell us where you are and why you're in Stockholm.
Okay, so I just moved to Stockholm a week ago, so everything is new and chaotic. And why I'm here is because my husband is a Swedish diplomat. I just moved from Qatar, where he was a Swedish ambassador, and we went through the war and the bombing and all the turmoil of the early part of the year. So, and now our 4 years there was up. So we moved here for a home posting, so I'm just getting to find my feet here and to understand where I am. It's like a diametrically opposite, part of the world, both geographically and culturally. So yeah, it's going to take some doing.
Thank you, Devika. I'm sure we have many stories to talk about
Oh
there.
yes.
Gautam, where are you?
I'm in Singapore. So, actually, as some of you know now, my wife Henna, who was in my class in college, we got married in several years after college in '98. We moved here about 25 years ago, and our kids were born here. So we spent half our life in India and half in Singapore. And yeah, I'm just happy to be on this call. I really didn't know that there's so many other authors from the batch, and I'm very excited. I've already bought Devika's 3 books, and I look forward to hearing more about the books about the rest of you. I got, I'm sure many. I don't know if you guys are in that category, but I'm in that category of thousands of books in bookshelves not yet read. I buy books like crazy, and though I will read at least one of Devika's because they're quite small. The at least the historical fiction ones, and the covers are magnificent. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be in Delhi tomorrow, and they've already reached.
Oh, nice.
That's so cool. And
Hope you
Gautam,
enjoy them.
yeah, I think a lot of us are in the category of having thousands of books at home. What I did was I culled my library, and so what you see here are actually only books of people of my friends, people I know, people or people who've interviewed me and put me in their books or acknowledged me in their books or something like that. So that's the bookshelf you see here. We have other books
Okay.
at some
Oh,
point.
that's
All
a
right,
very
let's
interesting cull. I shall
yeah.
try to do the same thing and see. I think my bookshelf of that nature will be like maybe 2 or 3 books, not the whole room of books that you have.
So this is what it says here. It says books by family, books by friends, authors Sree has interviewed, and books quoting, mentioning, or saying hello. So I put all that
Oh,
in there.
oh, it's a great list. I shall start making one right away for myself.
All right, let's go to
Fantastic.
Devyani. Where are you,
Yeah.
Devyani?
Hi, Sree. Hi, everyone. So, well, I'm in Gurgaon and moved 20 years back here. And so, being into education, I think ever since, I was by default a teacher and then, wore multiple hats before I became a principal and entrepreneur. But the teacher in me has never died. And I think this book, which should have been out at least 10 years back. So, yeah, most of the time we write books, but, we pen down stories, but we do not take that plunge of, okay, I mean, unlike Devika, I had to muster that confidence that can I even write? Would anyone would read? But yes, so well, I've been in Gurgaon for a long time, and the city has been a Delhiite moving to Gurgaon. The life is different. Delhi has a very different culture, but I'm happy. I like this Gurgaon culture and the kind of development in all quarters that happens here, whether it's corporate or academic or culture. I think Gurgaon has all everything.
That's
So
very that's very good to hear. And of course, Gurgaon and Delhi itself has changed, and that's how we're going to hear where Manish is right now. He's in Greater Delhi.
Yes. So, yeah, for lack of a better description, this is, I call it extended Delhi. We're right at the border. So it's a sort of twilight zone. And I like to think that I exist in the twilight zone, always in between person, so to speak. So, this whole question, where are you from? To my mind, contains in a miniature so many stories, so many philosophical questions. A lot of time I get asked, where are you from? And normally, when people ask that question, they're trying to pin you down. Essentially, whether you're a Gujarati or a Maharashtrian or a Bengali, they're just trying to place you somewhere. And the big cities, and Srini lives in New York, it belongs to everyone. Delhi also, in some ways, belongs to everyone. So this whole idea of where you are also pose a question. And in fact, my book of poems is also about that. Where do you exist? It's about quarantine. Is quarantine a permanent fate? Something in those lines. But I'll come to all that later. So yes, I am in Delhi. I like to consider myself a Delhiite, having gone to school there and then St. Stephen's College, and then spent most of my working life in journalism and foreign affairs. In Delhi, of course, I roamed around the world quite a bit, thanks to my chosen profession. So yes, Srini, thanks a lot for doing this, for bringing us together.
Thank you, and thank you everybody who's watching this in replay. I see our friend Mampri is watching in the back, and we'll get his comments and questions in a little bit. There are others as well. We are just so happy to have a chance to all be together. I'm going to ask each of you a little bit about your book, and I'm going to read a little bit about your book and your background so that people have that with them. And one of the things that I hope to get out of this is to inspire people who are watching. Everybody can be a writer, even if they're not writing, have written yet. My goal was to write books, and here I am at 56 and have not written a single book. But I'm very proud that people in my family and my friends have written so many books. Behind me, you see my dad has written, this is his 11th book. For his 80th birthday, he put together a collection of books. My wife has written a murder mystery and business books. And even my mother wrote her memoirs, which she wrote in WhatsApp during the pandemic. And she died before she could finish the last 5%, so finished it and we published it. I don't have the book in front of me, but behind me you see this painting of Dal Lake that my mom did. So I love authors. I love working with authors, and that's why I'm so proud to have this great collection of authors in our class. And we want to celebrate all of you and thank all of you for sharing your journey. So let me tell you about Devika. She has written multiple books. Queen of Ice was on the White Raven list, won a Young Adult Book Award, and was shortlisted for major prizes. Has been optioned for a movie and is part of Penguin Classic series. Has sold over 25,000 copies, and she's had other books: The Queen of Water, Queen of Earth, Queen of Fire, The Mauryas, and she has written more than 25 books in total, including fiction, nonfiction, and academic research work. When some of the people in this call heard that number, they started saying we're all amateurs compared to Devika. So we're going to give her the first chance to talk and give us some gyan, Devika, how you started writing, why you started writing, and how the heck do you write almost 30 books in 35 years?
Oh my gosh. First, thank you so much for putting this together, Sree, and for your lovely comments on writers. Look, there's no gyan I have to give. If you remember me from college, I was this extremely shy, completely confused, insecure person who didn't know where I was headed. Anyway, but I've been writing. In fact, I wrote all through college. I just never told anyone, never showed anyone. I entered a competition for writers, I think in my final year of BA, and that book won a prize. And I mean, so that was the start of my writing journey, actually. So I've written for all sorts of age groups. I've written, picture books to, books for middle graders, junior readers, young adults, now adults. And I used to write about a range of topics, but finally decided that I should write on women in history because that was the subject of my doctoral and postdoctoral research, which is basically looking at women in early medieval, largely North and East India, that's 7th to 12th century CE, and putting women back into the historical narrative from where they've been removed, because the writing of history is always male centered. So you're reading his story, you're not reading much about the women. And why I started writing the Queen series is because when I used to do author talks in schools, I tried this actually in schools all over India, not just in Delhi, all over. And I used to ask the students, I said, can you tell me anything about any woman that you ever remember reading about in history? And, they would name the usual suspects like, what, Jahanara, Mother Teresa, and so on. But they would then, and some of them would say Razia Sultana, and then they would grind to a halt.
Mm.
And I would say, is any woman before that? And Razia's 13th century, and they would, look very doubtful. And then I asked this question, which actually changed the way of looking at things. I said, the Indus Valley civilization, the Harappan civilization, do you think women existed then? And 99.9% of the time, the instinctive answer was no. So then, of course, 2 minutes later, they
Women
would look.
didn't exist then.
So 2 minutes later, they would look sheepish and say, actually, no. Of course, women would have existed, but why don't we know about them? Well, you don't know about them because your textbooks really don't tell you anything about them. And you will get a little paragraph entitled Social Conditions, where you'll be told that women's status rose or fell as if they're on a seesaw. And you'd be told a lot about the dresses they wore and the jewelry they liked to wear, as if to say that all through the past, women were obsessed with their looks, whereas men went out and did the real things, fighting battles, founding kingdoms, building structures, and so on. And in my research, this was absolutely, it flew in the face of evidence, because you are having women all through this period that I was looking at, the early medieval period, who are either on the throne or behind the throne, builders, donors, court negotiators, mediators, and so on. And you just don't hear about them because they're invisibilized. So I thought I should write about, some of these women for young adults, because they're never going to get access to any, information of the sort. And it's a legitimate part of their past, which is why I started with Queen of Ice, which is based on a ruler in Kashmir who ruled for around 50 years, 50, but you will barely hear about her. If you do hear about her, you'll be told that she was um, notorious for daring to rule, basically for transgressing patriarchal strictures, for coming out of the domestic space, and so on. And that's a typical way of viewing, most women, powerful women or remarkable women in the past. It is always this hysteria about whether they were good people. Did they pray? Did they do charity? And that's never a standard by which men are going to be judged. So that's the reason for my Queen series. So each of these titles focuses on some woman who's barely known about or was only known for certain stereotypical things. With Queen of Fire, which is on Rani Lakshmibai, the opposite is true. There's too much information.
Mhm.
So the facts have basically buried this woman into, and she's been resurrected as a sort of superhero, like a goddess who can do no wrong, whereas actually she's a human being who's young woman so I try to bring out that persona from the facts. And of course, my latest book is the Mauryas, which has got this great cover. I have to show this to you because it's like really eye-popping.
Yeah.
And and this is for adults, and this is basically looking at the Mauryan history in a sort of engaging, interesting way through stories. And I know apart from those of us who studied history, history is not really anyone's favorite subject, and it's seen as tedious and fact driven. And so I've tried to do it in a sort of light way. So that, in a nutshell, is about my writing. I'm still writing. I'm writing one more in the Queen series soon, but I'm also writing for adults on the women of Kashmir from the earliest times till the 12th century. And so that's pretty much. I do not get up every morning and write X number of words a day. I'm a sort of hysterical last minute writer.
Well,
you know,
you will come to your process and those tips in a little bit, but that's great introduction. Thank you. And
yeah.
that cover
So
is stunning. And I know Gautam and others were very impressed by your Queen series illustrators. So we'll talk about all of
yeah,
that in a bit.
yes.
Let's go to Gautam and hear a little bit about his story. He's an ex-banker and history buff. He's married to a banker. I guess that's what allows you to do all this writing now.
Yes.
He'll tell you about how his life changed when he bought a wartime manuscript at a UK auction in 2022, and he'll tell you about his book and everything he's done. He's spoken. The book, when it was launched, his big book was launched at the Houses of Parliament in London, the Asiatic Society, Mumbai, and by NUS in Singapore. And he's been interviewed on all major uh, news platforms, as well as with people who are connected to the to kind of military history and all these podcasts and things. And in the 6 months after the launch, he was on 25 lit fests centered on this, and many events centered on descendants of soldiers, as he's been speaking and bringing alive those stories because those are so important. And while he looks for more families to tell them about their soldier ancestor, he's writing his next book on Indian spies in World War II to be published by HarperCollins in 2027. Gautam, welcome and tell us your story.
Thanks. Well, again, very thrilled to be here. Basically, firstly, Devika, you were saying history was a boring subject. It was my number one favorite subject all through my life. I loved it. Of course, I was in love with my history teacher in school, so maybe that was part of it. But anyway, I loved history a lot. I've been a history buff, and my kids say we live in a bookshop. You can't see the bookshelf part, but it's all over the house. And I had been a history buff all my life, but it was just about just following my interests, buying books, reading them. I had never researched a thing in my life. And it's not that I just sort of just gave up my big banker job suddenly one day and just started deciding to write a book. It happened in two stages, and it both those stages were held by Henna. Each time she let me do whatever I wanted. Of course, we had a cushion and whatever, so that obviously helped. But at the same time, to have your wife let you just run amok and go to libraries instead of going to work was something that really really made it happen. So if everyone asks me who is the one person behind your book, I tell them it's my wife. It is true, it's her. She's let me do it, and I'm really thankful to her. The way it all began was that I did buy this manuscript at an auction. It really opened my eyes to Singapore, where I'd lived in for 20 years. It described some stories that happened 1 kilometer from the condo that I live in, and during World War II, and it really piqued my interest. And I started looking into Singapore in World War II, and trying to reach out to historians. I'm very shameless. I don't uh, even if there's a Nobel Prize winner, I haven't really got in touch with any Nobel Prize winners. But if I do, if I want their help, I reach out to them, I ask them. And I found in most cases, everyone does help you because, I mean, somehow they've been very charitable. So I was able to reach out to many historians. And one of them mentioned just one sentence to me, which I started researching, and that one sentence resulted in me resulted in the book that got published a few months back. That researching that one sentence led me to this amazing archive, which is actually in India, which no one seems to have used, or if they have used, they haven't written a book about it yet, thank God. And I was the first one out. And it's about the Indian Army in Singapore in World War II. I didn't know that half the soldiers defending Singapore were Indian. I didn't know that Netaji did not start the INA, but the Sardarji on the cover, Captain Mohan Singh of the Indian Army, started it 18 months before he did. And the second person on the cover is the gentleman whose sons are neighbors of many of us on the phone call just now. And I found the stories of these soldiers very evocative. And I said, Singapore doesn't know, India doesn't know, and we must know. And I may not be the best person to write about it, but if no one's doing it, then I will write about it. And fortunately, the publishers agreed, and there we have it. The book came out about 18 months after I started researching it. And I discovered one thing that Devika was referring to, is that many people, including me, always think about the men. One day while I was researching, speaking to the son of one of the soldiers, after 15 minutes, he says, Gautam, you only asked about my father. You haven't asked about my mother. I asked him, his father was one of the soldiers in my book. So I asked him, what happened to your mother? And he explained to me that his mother had been alone in India. She was 19 years old when her husband left for Singapore. For 6 years, she had no news of him, and she had two young children to look after. Yes, she was getting a part of his army salary, but she had no news of him. All she had heard that he had become a prisoner of the dreaded Japanese, about whom they heard horror stories, and she didn't know whether he was alive. Many of them received news that they were dead. And when he came back, he just walked into the door 6 years after the war ended. And I don't know what sort of welcome he was expecting, but the welcome he got was, she turned around, and when she saw him, she banged her fists on his chest and said, what have you done to me? How could you do this to me? How could you leave me for 6 years? How could you put me in this position? Do you know how difficult it has been for me to take care of the children? And that's where I discovered what Devika was telling us about, is that we all, let me not say we, I was focusing on the soldier in the story, the man in the story. And I discovered that a soldier's story is, in a soldier's story, only half the story is of the soldier. The other half is of his wife. And sometimes the greater half of the story is of his wife. And that's when I discovered, too late in the book, to write enough about her, is the waiting wife. So I've tried to make amends by talking about this at every opportunity that I get. That when we think of soldiers, we must also think of their wife. Of course, in those days there were only male soldiers, though there were about 600 Indian female soldiers who also figure in my story. So so that's been a very important part of the journey for me. And subsequently, I think even more important than the book has been for me to reach out to the sons and daughters of soldiers in the book, and to tell them, many of them had no idea what happened to their dad or their grandfather. And they didn't know the soldier came, either the soldier died or he came back and never spoke about it, because he had witnessed and experienced things that you cannot describe to anyone else who has not.
Sure.
And so they died without talking about it. And many of these soldiers, they did not win a Paramveer Chakra or a Victoria Cross, but they nonetheless led very, very brave lives, even though it was in captivity. That's what someone was telling me. How can a man who was a prisoner be brave? And, that's a valid question, actually. But I discovered that, even in captivity, you have to do, every life is a very brave life. And that's what I've, been on a crusade for the last few months to try to reach out to families, also to families I don't know. I know their names of the heroes. And I've been sending these. Sometimes people tell me, why do you post on Facebook? Can you please tell me if you know Lance Naik, Charan Singh from Chandigarh, who lived there in 1942? Please reach out to me. How can anyone know? How can you possibly find this family? But believe me, it works.
Yeah.
It works. It works. If you are doing this, please don't give up.
Mm.
And the pleasure you get out of finding that family, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So that's basically the journey that I've been on. And I discovered my second book, The Spies, while I was researching the first book. At that time, I decided I had no book one at that time at all. But I decided that this story is so fantastic, I'm not going to mix it up. This is going to be my second book. And so, fortunately, the publishers have agreed about that too, and I'm working on that now. It should come out next year. But at the same time, the moment I get an email from any son, grandson in the world saying, please help me find your father, my grandfather, I stop what I'm doing and help him or her, because that is much more important than any book that I can write.
Wow. Wow, Gautam, what a great story. Very inspirational. Thank you on behalf of those families that did so much for the world and for Asia and to fight off the enemy at the time, and of course people who saved India itself at the time. I just have a response to something you said earlier about going to the library. The uh, the story that most people know is that when husbands lose their jobs, they say they're going to work, but they hang out at the library or the movie theater. And here you were telling your wife you're going to the library and not going to work. So that was an interesting situation. And I think all of us will agree that it takes a village to write a book, and the support that we've gotten from not just our immediate families, but also our people who have inspired us, people who have supported us through our author journeys are really important. I say ours, even though I've not written a book, but I feel like I have through my family's books. Let's go to Devyani, who is joining us from Delhi. Devyani, thank you for being here. Let me tell everybody a little bit about her. You heard a little bit already that she's a seasoned education entrepreneur, strategist, and she helps people understand the world of teaching and and the world of school. She has 30 years experience driving innovation and impact across the education ecosystem. An ex-principal, founder of EduDev's Upskilling Education and EduDev's Knowledge Foundation, where she spearheads large-scale initiatives to enhance the educator capability and improve student learning outcomes through scalable, high impact solutions. And she has been working on her work with her books. And she's written with Cambridge University Press and the author of the Amazon best-selling book Humming Classrooms and Notorious Corridors, which has a fantastic title. The book offers a reflective, human-centered perspective on education, capturing both the vibrancy of classrooms and the deeper emotional and social dynamics that shape student experiences. It carries the voices of young people, and at this moment, as we all know, the voices of young people are so important. We are the batch of 1991, which lived through the Mandal Commission uh, response to the Mandal Commission and the uprising that happened then, and the way in which young people, very dramatically in some cases, stood up to what they felt were problems with government and society. And now we're seeing this at a 100x scale maybe. And so we want to hear all about that. And I do want to start with your title though, Devyani. That when I hear uh, corridors, right, we think of St. Stephen's. We used to talk a lot about the corridors in St. Stephen's. So welcome, and tell us your story.
Well, thank you so much. I think for me, this is a great platform, Sri. Just had a book launch in Lucknow, which you saw. It was very well accepted because I feel somewhere, now coming from the land of queens to bravery and soldiers, let's come to look at the kids around us. So, well, I must admit, I never intended or thought of authoring a book. And as you've just said, that I've been doing a lot of academic works with Cambridge, Oxford, wrote the syllabus and curriculum books, which are very well accepted, but that's very structured, that's very normative. So there's not much play of an author in that. And how this book happened was definitely a story, if I may. About 10 years back, I get a call from a student, and I will not name her. I will choose to name her um, as she has been addressed in the book. And Sulagna, and a girl who was extremely, a leader material and taking on all the tasks in school, whether those students who are always in the front lines of annual days, helping the teachers, and her voice was so bleak and shattered, stripped of confidence, and, half sobbing. She said, "Ma'am, can I meet you?" And I said, after 10 years, somebody calling me, and believe you me, if that call would have gone to any teacher, she would have said yes. So I didn't do anything. So she said, I said yes, and we met next day. And she came and she sat there and started crying. And she said that, "Ma'am, you know my passion for belly dancing. You remember?" I said, "Yes, you used to perform and you were performing, with troops as well." She says, "Ma'am, my parents never accepted. And after some years, now I'm not staying with my parents. I'm on my own." I said, "Okay." And she says, "Ma'am, my mentor, my elder sister, one who gave me a break, she runs a big, I'll not name her, she runs a very big school of belly dancing." And she said, "Ma'am, I betrayed her trust. And I I was thrown out of the, and I was not saying anything. She came on her own. She said, 'Ma'am, I have become kleptomanic.'" I was like, okay. I did not know how to react because for a teacher, I cannot applaud, I cannot say you're wrong. And she said, "Ma'am, last night, my fiance broke his engagement with me because he had issues of trust with me." She wept and she said, "Ma'am, I met you because I felt that you're one person, you'll not judge. And like old times, you'll just hear us out and say, 'It's okay, I'm there.'" And then she left. Honestly, Sree, she left and she left me jolted. And I said, "What have I done?" She was giving me a list of episodes which were blunders, which were mistakes. And in between, she said, I was caught by the Egyptian customs as well because of. I said, what lessons was I teaching if I failed to teach my students lessons of the basic lessons of living with dignity and joy? And this thought lingered, and I honestly became very restless because she was very good in academics. She was a very confident child. And I started honestly reaching out to so many students and felt that I feel so many voices lay in those corridors which you were just referring to. Because, corridors are naturally those spaces which may not teach you academic lessons, but you'll all believe which teach you lessons of the bro code, resilience, teamwork. And, there's a lot of personality development which happens in the corridors, even if they are mischief. So I reached out to those students. I heard their voices, honored their perspectives, and started recording. And with their permission, it was I would say it's a collective testament, and it's not a solitary narrative where I can lay claim to. And this book, Humming Classrooms, is only an outcome of the teacher in me who was so passionate to always probably remain around the students. Am I there?
Yes.
Yes, yes, we can hear you,
Yeah.
see you perfectly
Yeah.
well.
So those two, that teachers who are always surrounded with their students, who want to know them, who want to kind of go beyond. We've all had some mentor, some teacher, and I felt that my world was that. I could only think about whatever hats I may would have worn after that. But essentially, today also, if I talk or if I am addressing someone or if I'm having a conversation, the teacher in me is always alive. You know, just moving around those spaces, period after period. And this is for every teacher who might be listening to this, who would listen to this conversation. There is so much happens when a teacher moves in and around those spaces where she's always, not very happy with now it's the next period after period, break after break. You're all oscillating between the joys, the despair, the challenges of so many students. And, Gautam, I was laughing when you just said that there's a story in my book which says my heart skipped a beat. And it was like about 30 years back when I just joined, there was a boy who madly fell for me. And every time he was there, just out beneath the near the bus stop where I used to take the bus, he would always keep gazing. And so I felt that this was a lesson I had I'd never been taught in any of my B.Ed or M.Eds. So, teachers do face strange situations. And why I've addressed in this book that teachers carry a very powerful persona, not being beautiful, being that, but the biggest thing that is they are always saying, yeah, I understand. Okay, don't worry, we'll make it happen. So that kind of a trust, that kind of a warmth somewhere, the parents are not able to, sometimes they trade off to, okay, theek hai, koi behavior, it must be a behavioral issue or something. So there are those stories then there's about a boy who was my best student, in technology and computers at that time. And that little mischief that he did, because we all have done that. And this is for parents, for schools, and for teachers. They are kids, whether they are 18 or 16 or 14, mischief is in that age group DNA. So take it in that stride. And that boy, because he of course hacked the marks of one term of the entire class, and everybody was getting a 90 and above. But the way probably the school, yeah, because that was a little mischief because the computer teacher must have said, okay,
Very
some,
nice of him to give everyone 90 and above.
yeah, but
Yeah,
the story is
the instinct would be to reduce everyone else's grade and
no,
put himself.
all his group,
He was
everybody.
an ethical hacker, as we say.
उसका नाम
Yeah,
तो
but
फेमस करना चाहिए.
Instagram हम famous
उसका
नहीं
अवार्ड
कर
अवार्ड
सकते
मिलना चाहिए.
because he slit his wrist.
Oh my God.
Oh dear.
Oh dear,
Shit.
dear, dear. Oh my God.
Because somewhere as a school, we just took the normal track. of probably calling the parents of four other students, and then setting a precedence in the assembly that this is what has been done by, and we are suspending him and not letting him take the exams. And I that day come is very clear, crystal clear, vivid in front of my eyes. He was, though, saved, but it was the day of his exam where he had to take a computer exam. His mother gets into the room and finds that child in a pool of blood. So, what I'm trying to say through this book is that every school, every teacher, every parent must go beyond academic excellence, cognitive, go towards understanding every issue is not a behavioral issue. If your child is not talking to you, if he's upset, just go have those conversations. And I think our people like us, we do have these conversations, and we are of a different mindsets. But most of the parents, there's a lot of expectations, there's a lot of pressure, and the pressure is not gone. So somebody in Lucknow, one of the news reporters, he asked me, "Ma'am, what is your view on the upsurge at Jantar Mantar?" I said, this is what we teach our students every day, to voice their opinions. And that is exactly what those kids did. And say I went to Jantar Mantar to render some help. The children were so disciplined, at least they were so disciplined. They were cleaning those areas and they offered me water. I sat and they said, "Ma'am, you please have water." "No, ma'am, we don't need. If we need, you leave your email and number. We'll have. And they were like children of our families. What is wrong if they were there voicing their opinion? Those are the lessons we keep teaching them in the class. Those are the questions that they get in the exams. So this is a little journey, and as I said, I am no author. It was just my instinctive outburst to pen down. And I urge every teacher that please look closely into your classrooms beyond the marks, beyond, and see, you all will be having so many such stories. You may not pen them down, but start working on them. So that was
Oh,
a
wow.
little.
Devyani, thank you so much for sharing, and what a emotional experience you've had and going through this stuff and talking about it. So important. We really appreciate that. I feel bad that Manish has now to follow you on this conversation. I feel like we should have a separate conversation about education and where we're going. I'm just going to throw on the screen here since I mentioned them. These are the where is it? Here we go. Oh, here we go. This is the corridors that we know in college, and this is at least continues to look the same, I believe, while a lot has changed, of course, since 1991. In the interest of time, we're going to move on, and I'm going to introduce Manish. And
I want to say one line before
please,
since he showed the corridors everywhere remain the same.
hmm,
It's the issues that have just the change. Children are the same, their emotions are the same. It's just the issues that have changed.
yes,
But
thank you, and I'm so grateful that you have written this book. I'm looking forward to reading it and appreciate your being someone who's an empathetic teacher and educational leader. I do a lot of work around education, and so I've seen great leaders and also terrible leaders. So I appreciate who you are and what you've done. I'm going to move to Manish now. Manish is an author, editor, poet, and a seeker, not necessarily in that order. He's an international relations expert, but he wears many hats. He's the co-founder of the Center for Global India Insights, a think tank focused on decoding international affairs and charting India's ascent as a global power. He's editor-in-chief, India and the World, and organizes conferences. He's been to more than 80 countries. Is that right, Manish? I think that's the number. And
Yes.
He's got many books. India's G20 Legacy, Shaping a New World Order. That's I think the new one that's coming. Journeys Across Continents, 2 Billion Dreams, and his book about poetry that he's going to talk about that took us into the darkness, despair, and death of the time that was COVID. 6 years have passed since COVID started, and for many of us, it's like yesterday. Manish, tell us your story.
So, Srini, let me start with what you said that about how I got into St. Stephen's College, and it was uh, my old friend Tom who got me to the college. When I say old friend Tom, I meant Tom Eliot, T.S. Eliot, the legendary poet. Uh, and T.S. Eliot's books, poems were prescribed in third year. And when Hala Saab and Sharma Saab was interviewing me, Y.K. Sharma, English professor, and Crystal Dev Dawson, they found that most of these poems I knew by heart. So they were quite impressed. And that's how I got it. So poetry remains an abiding passion for me. I think, right from the childhood onwards, I think I lived in a world of words, thanks to my father's library, the deep passion for books. In fact, when I was 15 or 16, out of vanity, I printed a card where my designation said bibliophile, which I'm a bit embarrassed about, but that's what it was.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. That's
So
great.
I collected books. I spent endless hours at Sunday Bazaar of those days, Darya Ganj,
Yes, yes.
and
Rangachari.
getting some great bargains. So my life revolved around words, and partly I've been always a bit of a loner, a gregarious loner sometimes. Like I will talk also a lot, but essentially I remain a compulsively solitary individual. Um so, coming to this book of poems, and I don't want to talk about non-fiction work that I've written on foreign policy, and because poetry is something I've been writing from my school. I was in modern school. They used to have a magazine called Sandesh, and there was a column called A Fine Frenzy, which was specially created for me. Every month, I would contribute a poem, and really something I'm missing, and I really, if somebody can help me out to retrieve those magazines. My father used to keep it, really well as treasure and all,
Is
but
that
it has
Barakhamba or Mathura Road?
Barakhamba, Barakhamba.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll
So
try
I
to.
mean, it has been lost because of moving house and all that. St. Stephen's College, the Stephanian also contributed some poems and all that. So essentially, why I'm talking about poet, because all of you have written non-fiction. Gautam has written non-fiction. Devika, of course, has written fiction for young adults. Devyani has non-fiction on education, the world of education, and there are novels which are inside me, but it'll take some time to get it out. So I'll focus on this particular book because it's really very close to my heart. And as you said, we all live through this intensely painful period, where not a day passed by when we did not hear of somebody whom we knew very well, our loved ones, a friend. It was like a score. I mean, in one of my poems, I say, "What is the score today?
Hmm.
Who is dying? Who's surviving?" It was that kind of atmosphere. And many of these poems I would write on my notepad in mobile as a first draft of sorts. And what I found was that there are certain situations in life which cannot be really encapsulated or captured in prose. Poetry begins where kind of prose ends. It takes you into those numinous realms of feelings that transcends, in a way, words, because there are many times we say we're at a loss for words. Words fail me. So poetry tries to capture those emotions. Of course, there are standard definitions: spontaneous, overflow, powerful emotions, recollected in moments of tranquility. So said Wordsworth, and all kind of things. But the really thing is that for me, it was such an intense sort of thing. Maybe because I was always a feeler. I'm an empathetic individual, and empathy is, people don't understand it. They go to the German root of the word. It is something very intense, sort of this thing. And my reading, and also the larger questions, because we were in living literally, death, when we talk about it, self-extinction, uh, or simply the end of it, it germinates a whole lot of questions. What is this life about? Is there a meaning? There's such randomness, and such traumatic stories, people being refused, people lining up outside the hospitals and there's nobody to treat them, but people just dying without any advance notice. And this is the immoral, implacable virus, which did not discriminate. And so I try to capture in a series of poems I wrote around that time. And the book was, in fact, most of it was ready in the summer of 2021, 22. But I somehow or other felt, why publish it? It's so personal. And that's the kind of question, authorial self-doubt that you often are confronted with. And something at the back of my mind, which was a thing I read in Emily Dickinson, publication is the auction of the mind. I took it too literally. So I kept on deferring 1,000 visions and revisions. And so, this was done, looking for illustrators and all that. Finally, it all came together in around 2024. And then subsequently, I thought that since some time has elapsed, then how to give it a larger frame, a larger philosophical frame, how it can be a statement, how it can also dramatize the predicament of the present, that in a way, COVID may have ended, but the idea of quarantine, of confinement, this in a way is our permanent human condition in some ways. So I built on that metaphor, and then I thought of this title, Portraits in Quarantine, uh, and the subtitle, Dwelling Poetically on the Earth. And that phrase is also very significant, dwelling poetically. It comes from, Rilke, German poet, and interpreted by philosopher Heidegger, that what it means to dwell poetically on the earth. Poetry or literature or writing, as all of you are here, as a calling, and not in a casual sense. It's not about producing those books and bestsellers, but as a literature as an act of faith, literature as a form of exploration, self-exploration, and transmuting, like for example, you speak about death, despair, darkness, which we all saw around that time. Anybody with a feeling heart could still recall that, how to transmute that. Because how poet and writers are different. Everyone has feelings, and probably everyone is a writer as well. But writers and poets are gifted with that thing to transmute that, to transfigure that pain. And that is why quatrains. So now, technically, quatrains are four-line poems. So my a lot of my poems have rhyme, parts of it at least, but they are not strictly quatrains. Quatrains, in a way, is a metaphor. It's about poetry germinating in dark times, in confinement. That's where it comes from. One of the old lines that say, our sweetest tales are those that tell of saddest thought, if you remember what we read long time back in school and college. So this was the thing. And I also felt, I must tell you about how finally I published it. It was primarily the provocation of two people, my wife and my daughter, who were fed up with my reciting poems to them. So when are you going to bloody publish them? It will remain in this room. So this kept on going for 1 hour or so, and my daughter, who had just taken after me, and she's a great reader. She loves to read. We're constantly talking about books. She was the one who really got after my life, and I say, if you don't publish it, don't talk to me ever. You have to do it, kind of, just to push it, and I'll keep improvising on it. But this way, will never end. So finally, I said, okay, time for a closer. I found a publisher. Poetry is a minority genre. Poetry does not sell, and there aren't many dedicated readers of poetry. But then literature itself is a minority affair. Actually, we are the true minority. Poets are the true minority, and an endangered minority at that. So please find a copy of the book, try to read, and if you like, I can recite some
I was
of
going to
these
ask you,
poems.
can you just
Yeah,
recite? Yeah, can you recite
yeah,
one of your
yeah.
poems?
So let me
I've not seen
just
the book, but
cite.
I want to
These
tell
are
you that
short poems.
I know you
Yeah,
have 62 poems over 82
yeah, yeah.
pages, preface, and six crucial pages hold the key to the journey. The poems are rendered in freestyle, are recited alternatively in the first and third persons, and no allegiance to any meter, much less to the rigorous straitjacket of the quatrain. Literary
Right.
license underpins the literary outburst. This is
Where
our
is
friend
this from?
Sumit Basu's review of your
Oh,
book,
okay.
and
Sumit, I did not know it was a
he had
critique.
this wonderful. While you prepare the what you're going to read to us, I just want to say that
Yeah,
he really captures you, and he said that you were someone who had some melancholy in your life. You were subject to bouts of introspection, and
right, right.
today you're someone who spends a lot of time speaking to the world, educating the world, teaching the world about the world. And so that boy who went from introspection to that, I think, is fascinating. So go ahead, please.
Sumit was very right about melancholy. This is something that remained with me, a fundamental sadness, a deep down sadness about the passing time, about the illusoriness of the whole world. So let me read out some, I'll start reading a
And
couple
while you're
of.
doing that, just as you're preparing that, folks, if you're watching us live, please jump in with any questions. We're going to turn off the spotlight so that others, I hope everyone who's watching will turn on the cameras and can participate. And then at some point, I'm going to turn off the recording completely so that we can have a proper chat without the cameras rolling, so to speak. So over to Manish as he reads one of his poems.
This is called a game of mask. Dear, what's the score today? Is it night or day? Is deadening day after day. Who is playing? Who is out? Who is dying? Who's surviving? There is no cheer, only grieving. No singing, only inconsolable wailing. What kind of game is this? Everyone is wearing a mask. Streets are desolate, utterly forlorn, no human for miles on end. What are they hiding? What shall we do? What shall we ever do? Whom should we ask? If we die, will we be reborn? After this long night, will there be a new dawn? Distraught, I turn to my cask to sip melancholy and wine and soak in my inner ferment. In quarantine, I turn a saint. So this is one of them. If you like, I just recite one more poem,
Sure.
which is about the theme. This is called All You Who Quarantine Tonight. All you who quarantine tonight, void of air and light, take heart, don't despair. Quieten your mind and offer a prayer. Epiphanies glow in the dark if you have only eyes to see. Isolated, you may just find your spark and discover rare gems under the sea. Like good times, bad times won't last. Go deep inside self, your soul repair. This darkness will soon be past. Recover your poise, your song share. Let healing begin in quarantine. Purify your spirit, fortify your brain. In life, it's never too late to begin again. Compose quatrains, transfigure your pain.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. That was so well done. And I appreciate that. Since I mentioned our friend Sumit, I thought I must show you this photograph of how he and I used to look like in your discussion of the passage of time, 35 years. And I want each of you to kind of reflect on that, the 35 years have passed. This is how we used to look. We used to call him Jesus because this half German, very tall,
Yeah,
great looking
but he
guy
still
with
looks the
beautiful.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just a grown-up Jesus now.
Yeah, yeah. Now look at us.
Oh,
This
wow.
this is a piece I wrote for the Mince Cafe newsletter of the
Oh, yeah,
college,
yeah, yeah.
where I said we were reunited, but not our hair. Our hair did not make it the 35 years. So let me go to Devika. You've been listening to all of this. Your thoughts, and then a little reflection on the 35 years. I'm going to do short responses because we want to keep going, and then I want to bring people in with their questions. I know some people are watching, but go ahead, Devika.
It's been a privilege to know all your journeys in brief and the diverse ways in which we can encapsulate life in all its complexity. So it's so interesting. And I wish we had discovered this 35 years ago that we were actually like-minded. We were going to go and do this someday. And, maybe we could, it would have been nice to have these chats. But yeah, the 35 years, it just, it seems when you put a figure to it, 35, it's so, overwhelming. But when you look back, and there's so many times I reminisce about, it's so clear to me everything. I remember Devyani and I being interviewed one after the other, uh, where we'd applied, and we landed up at the same time, so we were,
By the
and
way,
Sree,
does the college still do interviews? Does
I
anybody know?
don't know
How do
that.
Yeah,
how
yeah, they do. They
they
do.
do? Really? Okay.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
Sree,
go ahead.
you sat behind us for 3 years. So I remember this. You and I took part in a Scrabble competition once. So there's so many memories I have, and it's just I think you never really know what you're going to do when you're there. Yeah, we selected, in our case, history, and then I thought, okay, I like this, but I have no clue where I'm going after this. And just by default, I happened to take up MA because that's the next logical thing, and it prevented me from thinking too much about where I was headed, because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my love for writing and my love for history. So I didn't know what I was going to do to combine the two. And after MA, again, there's this big void where I actually tried to work for a publisher and I hated it. And that was a huge blow because I thought my life was had to be somehow involved with books, but I just didn't realize I was coming at it the wrong way. And then after that, I did my MPhil, my PhD, and my postdoc in history, and that is when I realized that I somehow magically managed to make my two loves unite in a way, history and writing. And yeah, so I've been just, and I'm still doing that. I'm still writing about history. I'm still writing. I'm still finding ways to communicate history, to people. And I think if I was to talk to that girl in college all those years ago, I would just tell her to just hang in there, be patient. 35 years goes by in a blink, and you eventually get to what you're meant to do, even if you take, circuitous paths to get there, but you'll eventually get there. And I think it's been, every minute has been worth it. Every minute has, and I think college really laid the foundation for who I became because, yeah, uh, the grounding it gives you, the people I met. Although, as I said, I wish I had more discussions with all of you, but yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
That's
Yes,
beautiful.
and this.
Yeah, beautifully put. Thank you for that. And we should share this with young people. But by the way, this is the history book that Devyani and Devika and I studied. One of them. This is Romila Thappar's book. I just realized she was born in 1931, which was seemed very close. 1988. Now we know how far that was. This was
Yeah.
how I had. This is June 20th, 1988. I don't know when college started, but this is obviously very
Yeah,
early,
around that
just
time.
around that
July.
time.
It
Around
started
then,
in
yes.
July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my dad took me to the bookstore and I bought this. And I was trying to have some kind of, you're trying to find yourself. And this was my effort to have
Srini,
a like a
you were very
coat of
proactive.
arms. Like
Srini, you were very proactive that you bought the book in June before the session began.
Yeah.
doesn't mean I read it. I have one quick thing
You
to say
always think
about
ahead, yeah?
one quick thing to say about history because you're seeing three history students here. Two of them did very well. I did not very well. That Professor
Mm.
Baker, David Baker, when I met him many years later, he asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm teaching at Columbia." He thought for a second and said, "It doesn't change my opinion of you, but it changes my opinion of Columbia. It has fallen dramatically. You're a professor at Columbia. That doesn't make any sense to me." So, all right, let's keep going. Gautam, your reaction and then
Yeah,
your
so
thoughts on 35
actually,
years.
yes, yeah. So the two things. One is we talked about interviews, and I have to say that after my parents, the human being to who I owe the most in the rest of my life is this chap called Anurag Das, who's one batch senior to us. He was an
Mhm.
eco,
Yes.
and he
Yes.
one day in the evening he went to Henna's house and he said, "Are you ready for your interview?" She said, "What interview?"
Mhm.
He said, your Stephen's interview. He says, I don't have any Stephen's interview. She said, of course, I went to college today and I saw your name up there. You're supposed to go tomorrow. So anyway, because of this heavenly intervention, Hannah, who'd not got the letter, went to her interview and eventually got into college, and we met, and whatever. So I always keep on reminding him this, which was a great story for me. The other thing I wanted to tell you, I don't know at what stage we would get to this, but I would like to say that there are many people who want to write, think of writing, and they get stuck or whatever, blah blah blah, lots of issues. But there are two, three things
I'd like to come back to that if
that's
you don't mind, because
okay.
I'll just
We
go
can
through.
go to
But
that later.
your
Okay,
your
fine.
reflection on 35 years, just very quickly.
So yeah, I just great to hear all these fantastic stories. I mean, it's really, I was very moved by Devyani's story about those two young kids, and it's really shocking to hear what actually you know young people had to experience. And I'm so glad that she's taken this effort to write about them.
Yeah.
It's really credible. It's really touching. So that's the thing that really moved me most in what I heard today.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
your advice to 35-year-old, I mean, 19-year-old or 18-year-old Gautam.
Oh, my advice to me. Oh, just yeah, I just say just keep on doing what you're doing. I have no regrets. I've enjoyed my life, and I'm very happy about all the choices I took. So,
Okay, that's good.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Devyani, over to you.
Yeah, so as Devika said, I very distinctly remember um I got married immediately when I left college. So when we were having our post-grad first year exams, I was full-time pregnant. And she would tell every day, "Are you okay?" So she was more concerned about me, not so every time she meets me. So I was so scared, me and Dipali, that she might not start having her labor in the exam room. But yes, I no, to the 18-year Devyani, I would say that I mean, of course, I have a lovely husband and I've got a picture perfect life. But still, at times there are so many things that we as youngsters impulsively take those decisions. So hang on. I mean, don't get, as she said, impatient and do whatever you want. If you want to indulge in anything, indulge, but don't hinge onto your dreams. And keep navigating with some kind of vision in your mind. We like all of us. I mean, I never wanted to be a teacher. That was the last thing. And imagine me, that's how life teaches you. Writing a book like this, being so passionate, and I can just say the best thing, it's very, very gratifying to be a teacher. Where at that for years, honestly, Sree, I felt that I've not done good enough. I'm just a teacher from I am a teacher. That's the journey I've traversed
Wow,
in so many years. Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Manish?
Thank-
Manish?
Um, Very quickly, I mean, 35 years has passed. It looks so unreal, because I have such vivid memories of college and like photo memories, literally some moments will come back and you say you're there. I remember one time it was raining heavily and we're in the lawns, that what do you call SCR lawns or whatever. And we're all having, just moving around. Some of the images are so vivid. So it make me question time. Again, sorry to introduce this philosophical note, but what is time? 35 years, will we be there for another 10 years or 15 years? We don't know. But this is also, when you reflect back, it's also time to acknowledge, what made St. Stephen's so very special to me and remains to this day, apart from some great, lovely people I met, batchmates, classmates, and all. It was a diverse collection of people, teachers. I mean, those are the teachers who shaped me, who gave me a sense of belonging, who gave me a sense of home. You know, Dr. Rao, very underestimated professor. He was my head of department. Arjun Mahe, he was a brilliant teacher. And And there was a gentleman called Ashish Roy. He died. He passed away. But I can still recall those lectures sometimes very vividly, scraps of it, sitting doing a tutorial with Ashish Roy in the lawn and talking about metaphysical poetry. So I think those were blessed moments. And that's the only time when we have a sense that we are immortal. When you are so young, 18, 19, that's beautifully captured, the intimations of immortality. So it was a blessed time. And of course, we grow up, and now 35 years hence, we are all here. And so life goes on. And my only thing is that, you should follow your heart, that you should keep doing what you think you should be doing, keep writing, keep singing, but find a space. One thing I want to tell you that when you talk about author journey, since I left college, I've been writing journalism, foreign policy analysis, reporting, and all that. In my daughter's eyes, it counts for nothing. She said, "You're not a writer." Why? Because I've not written a novel. So creative writing, writing which is non-transactional, like poetry, for example, or novel or a fiction, which is more creative. Non-fiction, of course, like what Gautam had done, amazing. He's trying to retrieve those, figures, the memories of that, and the forgotten personages of history, forgotten figures. So, so every form of writing is
No,
there. So keep at it, what you believe in, and then there's a way to go before it's over, before
Thank
there's
you.
no time for anything.
Thank
yeah.
you. Before I bring in, I turn off the recording and bring in our classmates, I just want to ask each of you very short, your tips for people who want to write. It's never too late to write, never too late to write a book. Devika has written almost 30 books. But what are your tips for writers? It can be kind of bullet point tips would be helpful, and then we'll
Sure.
wrap up. We'll start to wrap up.
Sure. Sree, I actually run creative writing workshops. I've been doing that for the past 20 years. I'd be happy to do it for anybody in this group who wants to start writing.
Oh, wow.
All kinds of writing, that is memoir, historical fiction, normal fiction, whatever, nonfiction. And I would say the main thing is number one, you need to read. You need to read, 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 and read. There are no shortcuts. So if you want to write well, you have to read extensively, exhaustively. That's my number one tip. Number two is keep at it. You don't need to show anyone. You don't need to, because maybe you can't handle criticism, maybe you can, you don't know. So you can just write extensively for yourself and keep it between yourself and your publisher. If you're fortunate to find one, of course, there are lots of tips about how to, get a publisher. And that's another thing. Develop observation power. I would say that's very important because your ability to describe people, places, situations, and so on derives from that. So I think that's something you can cultivate. And the other thing is, the last thing I would say is, if your heart is not in it, then don't do it. It's not something that you need to tick off a bucket list. You need to like it. You need to have a passion for it before you can actually enjoy the process. And you have to enjoy the process, because if you don't, then the writing will show it. So, and if this is really truly something that you really want to do and you love it, then I think just keep at it. It doesn't have to be an enormous endeavor. You can just do 100 words a day. At the end of the month, it adds up to quite a bit. So, yeah, just keep at it, follow your heart. And in a nutshell, this is it.
Thank you. The Devika Rangachari, author of almost 30 books. Thank you for your time, energy, and your passion for writing and taking your history lessons. I'm sure our professors would be very proud of you and what you've done with it. I'm so glad and so lucky to have you in our circles. I am
Thank you,
so
Sree.
grateful. Yeah, Manish Priyadarshi has had to leave, but he was posting comments throughout, and he says, leaving for a meeting, wonderful session, great, wonderful to listen to all the writers of our batch. So we're going to now put this recording out, and everybody's going to be able to see it. Devyani, let's go to you. Your tips on writing and final thoughts.
I think I'm too new to even give any tips for writing. I would say ditto, ditto, ditto to Devika. But yes, I just want to say one thing, that suddenly when you look at Instagram, and this is for they say, become a writer in 3 days, become a writer. I really don't know. This was lying with me, sitting with me for 10, 12 years. So everyone has a creative mindset. The only thing is nurture that creativity. And tips Devika has given that you really need to read a lot, but your creativity, your observation should be. So it all starts from being observant. So you have to be very, very observant if to write.
Thank you, Devyani Kapoor. Thank you for your work, helping young people for all your life. That's been an amazing journey you've been on, and I'm glad you've been able to put that, write it down so that others will be inspired and help and understand the importance of educators. I'm the son of a teacher who went on to do other things, but grandson of teachers, and my mother was a dance teacher. And I know the role teachers play in everyone's lives. And so I was very proud to work with something called the Global Teacher Prize. They gave $1 million to one teacher around the world, K through 12 teacher around the world every year. And it was started by one of these rich Malayalis in Dubai. And I said, why do you give $1 million to a teacher? If you give, $50,000, it'll change his or her life. And he said, the fact is, if you gave 999.99, people wouldn't care. But if you give $1 million, people would care. And the sad part is that many of you have not heard of this prize. So there is this thing that shows you teachers are undervalued. He wanted teachers to be valued like rock stars and celebrities, and that's why he did that. But thank you so much, Devyani, and good luck. You're on the book tour right now, so you're busy. So I appreciate your coming on here. Let's go to Gautam. Gautam, your tips and final thoughts.
I'm too new to this to give tips, but I liked one thing that Devika mentioned, which is that if other people are thinking about it, they have to love doing it. It should not be a chore and not a tick on the I've done this list. Uh, Other thing I can say that when about the process of publishing and close to publishing and post publishing, that's something that I think I feel quite that I know it quite well. And that's something that I would just want to tell you. That's what I was talking to you about earlier. If anyone wants to, if there's anything that you set up, or I'm willing to be the person that sets it up if you want, to, in this, in the, process of, let's say, how to write a book proposal. That's after you've done your, discovered what it is you want to write. I cannot give advice about what to write about, but how to write a book proposal, and how to get the book published, and then what to do after you publish the book. That's something that I think I feel I can maybe add 2 cents about, and I'm happy to spend time in doing it.
No, thank you, Gautam. First of all, I know that how helpful you are because I reached out to you with a book and needing some help for a book, and you immediately gave us such great information. So I appreciate you. And maybe Devika, Gautam, we should do a business of books session down the road. I think people would be interested in that. We should also
Course.
talk, by the way, isn't it amazing? We talked about writing for an hour and a half and never mentioned AI, which is a good thing we didn't mention it because it would have sucked us in. But you've seen books have been canceled because of use of AI, either on purpose or accidentally. So there's lots of turmoil in the book industry, and so I think our we could do it for maybe even broader than just our class, maybe all of Stevens or whatever. But I'd take you up on that, Gautam. Thank you for that,
Yes,
and
yes,
thank you
yes,
for
yes.
telling those unusual, important, forgotten stories of Indian history and Indian valor around the world, and that really matters. And I look forward to your bringing the book to the U.S. and coming out here.
Thanks.
So thank you,
Yeah.
Gautam. Manish, your final thoughts and your writing tips.
Tips, I'm not sure, but of course, to add to that original list put by Devika, read, read, read. That's number one. Write, write, write without fail. Think, 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 in a way. Then you got to ask basic questions. If you don't have questions, then you will be a commercial writer. You will be writing mystery, thrillers, or whatever, whatever. But this whole idea of great literature or whatever, something that will stay on or that will continue to nourish people long after. If you're looking at that kind of writing, then you've got to ask some fundamental questions about life itself, about the meaning, and all those questions in a genuine way. And my last thought, which is that don't be smitten or obsessed with the idea of being a writer. A lot of people get stuck that I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. Writer is about writing. You have to write. For many years, I thought I'm a writer, or writing practically nothing very creative. So this whole idea of writing You have to cultivate. It's like, I tell you the example I can give is like Riyaj, in the music, where it's like your little temple, a little meditation room, a kind of sanctuary. So it should become that. Writing at its highest pitch is a form of meditation. And I mean, it may sound that in my book launch, uh, one of the Rukmini Bhaya Nair, one of the very well-known poets, he said, in these poems we entered Manish's puja room,
Mhm.
all the literary gods that inhabit his mind. I think you have to, because a lot of times young people, when they are attempting to write, they have no idea of, or not that idea of literary greatness. What makes good writing, great writing, the judgment. So read a lot and find time to be with yourself. You have only solitary people can write because you exist with your pen, paper, laptop, and there are multiple distractions in the world. So you got to cut down on that.
Yes, well, very well said. Thank you. And Manish, thank you for all the work you do going out there representing Stevens around the world, 80 plus countries you've been to, and your thoughts are very welcome. I'll leave you folks with a couple of things. My wife just came back, is coming back today after being 3 weeks away, trying to finish her book, getting away from the family just to write, and it made a big difference. Devika, one of the lines that I love is a page a day is a book a year. A page a day is a book a year, and now we know how Devika did it. A
Absolutely.
page a day for 30 years, she got 30 books. And so the way like everything has changed is changing is so important as well. And the pressure on the kids today, Devyani, is very different from when we were there and what we went through. I'm so grateful we didn't have cell phones. I'm grateful we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. We were innocent, naive in many, many ways that today's children exposed to kind of the toilet system of the world and some of the greatest things in the world at the same time, and how they balance it affects their lives and all of our lives. And we're manipulated, as you know, by the algorithms and all that stuff. So, remembering my innocence of those days, I'm going to leave you with this photo of how I used to look, how I think I look, and how I look. And in the middle is how I used to look in St. Stephen's in 1990. And I remember there were people who were obsessed with their hair and worried about losing their hair, and I was confident I would never lose it. And now look at me. So, so folks, I'm going to just hit pause here for a sec. I mean, hit pause on the recording. And to everyone who watched, thank you for watching the recording. Thank you for those of you who are able to be here. We want your feedback. We want your ideas. We want to do more of these. I'm happy to do them, but we just need speakers and topics. Even if you don't want to speak yourself, recommend a classmate or a topic that we can do. Thank you, everybody.